So below the surface, there's deep fractures right now within NATO, and they are basically saying if we don't decide anything at all, maybe people won't see how divided we are. So this is a sort of way to do damage control um, to keep the appearance of a unified bloc, even though in reality there's deep divisions within the NATO bloc itself right now.
Hello, everybody. This is Pascal from Neutrality Studies, and today I'm talking to Sjoerd de Groot, a peace activist in the Netherlands, where he co-organizes a protest against the NATO Summit on June 24th to 25th under the banner of Peoples for Peace. That is peoplesforpeace.com. This is what we want to discuss today. So, Sjoerd, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for organizing this. And can you tell us a little bit more about your organization and what you're planning for June 24th, 25th?
Yeah, so Peoples for Peace is an organization that wants to pull together all the pro-peace, anti-war forces in the Netherlands, but also um, more broadly within NATO. And the thing that distinguishes us from other ways similar protests have been organized in the past is that we take a distinctly non-ideological approach where we have a basic program which can be found on our website with a list of about 10 demands. And we say whoever wants to get behind these demands, regardless of any other ideological positions, is welcome to join our coalition. Not just you're welcome, but we want you to join our coalition because, as we have seen in the past and in the present to some extent, many anti-war coalitions or groups only focus on one very distinct corner of the ideological or social playing field. And this is actually, I think, a non-effective way of organizing because, well, we have those in the Netherlands and other countries as well. The one could say like left radical groups, which can mobilize from a few hundred to a few thousand people at most, but who only represent a very small portion of society, and more importantly, who are always present at such occasions anyway. So if the radical socialist or Marxist groups with their red flags and stuff show up to protest, that will not scare the NATO leaders because they take into account the basically inevitability of them being there. However, if we see a large turnout of people from right-wing dissident groups to migrant communities, to left-wing groups, to liberals, so all across the spectrum, people coming together, uniting behind this one theme of we do not support the war drive that is currently led by NATO, then the NATO leadership can see that their tactics of divide and rule don't work anymore. And that will put pressure on NATO leaders because it's my hypothesis that, especially in Europe, governments do not represent the population at large or working people, but they primarily represent the interests of finance capital. And the only way of maintaining a government that is primarily acting on behalf of the interests of such a small fraction of society is by keeping the rest of society divided. And we're trying to break that gridlock.
That's a very good thing to do because you're absolutely right. The peace movement as it exists today, or peace forces in Europe and also the North America, are very much fragmented between left and right and certain center groups that actually kind of look down on each other or
Yeah.
are being made or let me put it this way, mainstream narratives continuously try to say like, oh, these groups cannot march together, or right wing groups are racists, therefore if lefties move with them, they're racist too. I mean, they try to create these divides that then really makes any kind of proper peace movement very, very difficult to have. So I congratulate you for that approach. the organization Peoples for Peace, how old is it, and who are you working with, or how many people are you who try to organize this?
Right. So we're not formally an organization, but a collective of individual peace activists. Of course, some of us are tied to various organizations, but this formation more or less appeared out of another protest organization, which in some way dates back to the American Rage Against the War Machine coalition. So in February of, I believe, 2023, there was in many ways, similar attempt of uniting a broad coalition of peace groups in the United States well, somewhere in February 2023, and on the same day in various other countries, various similar protests were organized, and one of them in the Netherlands. And since then, this organization that has organized the protest in Amsterdam at that date has been organizing protests against the NATO war drive every month. So every last Sunday of the month, we are in Amsterdam organizing our protest against the war machine. And so we've been doing that for that's over 2 years now. And the people behind this organization, with some other people we have encountered as well, added to the coalition, we have basically taken the initiative somewhere last year, saying, okay, next year the NATO summit will be in our country, so it is our responsibility to organize a protest. And out of this coalition, basically, Peoples for Peace grew out of this group.
I see. I remember that the Rage Against the War Machine in Washington, which was rather large, with people like Medea Benjamin and Jimmy Dore and so on, all giving talks and trying to unite. Okay, it's good to see that this movement is alive and well, and is still doing things also now, especially as we are going toward that new NATO summit, which is always a moment of the actual war machine then gathering speed again and ramming forward. Let's not forget that it was 2008, the Bucharest summit, which basically cemented the idea that Ukraine and Georgia have to become NATO members and create much of the havoc that we've seen since. What are your fears or expectations about this new NATO summit in your country?
Well, I think this will be in some way, landmark NATO summit as well, but in some way in the opposite direction of the way Budapest or Bucharest was about 15 years ago, because it's looking like this will be one of the most minimalistic NATO summits in a long time, possibly in NATO history. So nominally, this was looking to be a rather easy PR win for NATO, because the new Secretary General, Mark Rutte, is our previous Prime Minister. And the Netherlands is nominally one of the most pro-NATO countries in NATO. So on paper, there would be very little difficulty organizing this in The Hague. Well, in reality, it's starting to look a lot more difficult. So literally half the country's police, people working for police are mobilized to go to The Hague and organize security. And I believe even from Germany and Belgium, additional police forces are brought in. So it's costing us a lot of money as well. They're talking about, I believe, 186 million euros to organize this 2-day summit right now, which is, by the way, more than last year. Cuts in public transportation were announced. So, well, we can see where that money went in some way. But additionally, we, as Peoples for Peace, recently started working together with another group within the country, which is a group of veterans. And not only will there be very little protest, which was probably what they were hoping for, but veterans who themselves have been active in NATO missions will be protesting against the NATO summit, along with the people we bring along with people from right-wing dissident movements, which grew out of the anti-COVID movement, along with Turkish migrant workers who we're also working together with. So this is a very improbable coalition of forces, which will come out to protest most likely, even though on paper, as I said, are no signs of any serious dissident anti-NATO movement within the Netherlands. So in that sense, it's probably going to be a PR debacle already, and I believe they are anticipating this. So originally, the idea was to have a NATO summit from June 24th until the 26th. Right now, it's cut down to just 24th and 25th. However, there will be no talks whatsoever on the 24th. The NATO leaders will just arrive in the Netherlands and then have a dinner with the heads of state and heads of government. And on the next day, there will be only a few hours of talks. And there's basically been an announcement that the final declaration will not substantially involve anything at all, because if they, and this is what I mean by significant but in the opposite direction, they're afraid that if they position themselves to take firm decisions, then there will be clashes between the different countries. So below the surface, there's deep fractures right now within NATO, and they are basically saying if we don't decide anything at all, maybe people won't see how divided we are. So this is a sort of way to do damage control, to keep the appearance of a unified bloc, even though in reality there's deep divisions within the NATO bloc itself right now.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, if you just look at the change of hearts the United States had with its new administration and how the Trump team is basically a loose cannon for NATO, and nobody knows where that cannon will take down pillars of NATO dogma next. I suppose that the Europeans must be extremely jumpy at the moment of how what they can still achieve with this vehicle, this NATO vehicle. So in this sense, it would be absolutely fantastic if your protest managed to speed up the process of fragmentation inside NATO, because that has for the longest time been their game against others, fragmenting them.
Yeah.
Are you expecting, or are you getting any kind of mass media coverage at the moment? I mean, you reached out to me and we are able to talk on YouTube. Have you been successful in getting any kind of attention from traditional media outlets?
Barely. So we have, as I believe in any country within the Netherlands, an alternative media circuit as well, and we have some good contacts there. We have been on a number of different alternative media programs within the Netherlands, although, well, there's a lot of gains to be made there as well. But in traditional media, no, we have basically been ignored, and that's actually, we recently found out that going back to the monthly protests we were doing for 2.5 years, this is not just a matter of we weren't big enough to be noticed. It was a matter of policy, because so we've been doing this monthly for 2.5 years, and not even once, oh sorry, one time about a year and a half ago, a major Dutch newspaper did a story about us where they said we were, of course, funded by Russia, which is actually quite funny, because if you look at the setup that we're using, there's basically nothing that costs any money. So what would they have to pay for? But so that's yeah, that's the only time that we got any coverage. However, about a few months ago, another protest organization, which is more geared towards the traditional liberal activist groups, was launched or went public, and they immediately got newspaper stories written about them, interviews with their spokespeople, even on the national nightly news. There were, I would say, basically advertisements made for them. And for the Dutch National Press Bureau, they also wrote a message about them. However, someone made a mistake and they put in a photo of our protest with their story. So they were aware of our protest because apparently they had photos of our protests on archive and someone accidentally inserted that. So they were aware of it, but made the decision to not even once write a story about it. Now, about a month ago, we sent a press message to the national media where we announced our protest, and in response to that, a short press statement was written by the National Press Bureau, in which they tried to frame us as a sort of conspiracy marginal group by highlighting a select number of the speakers we announced, um, who together did not make a representative picture of the whole spectrum of speakers we had on roster.
Yeah, this is also, of course, a very simple tactic of trash
Yeah.
talking people, right? And this guilt by association, right? If you have somebody who's even slightly controversial in the group, and then you focus the spotlight on them, and then you try to tint the entire group in that light, it's like it's absolutely disgusting, but it's foreseeable. I am glad that you're getting at least a bit of coverage. Do you have any plans also to live broadcast the event or to stream it somewhere?
Yes, we're not entirely sure if this is going to happen, but we do have someone who is experienced with technically realizing such live streams, and we're looking to see if we can make budget for basically doing an on-site live stream. Of course, the mobile network will be quite overloaded with all the people being there. So, but we're looking into technical solutions for this problem, and there is a decent chance that yes, there will be a live stream of at least the speaker program. So, for clarity, it's relevant as well. So on both days, so the 24th and the 25th, we will be protesting, and we will begin with a speaker program, as well as music on the Malieveld, which is a park near the central station in The Hague, which is quite big. And this will last for about an hour. And then there will be a march around the area where the NATO summit will take place. We wanted to march to the building, the World Forum, but basically the entire area is closed down. So it will be very hard or impossible to get there. And of course, we don't want our people who will turn out to our protest to get in trouble with the police. So we'll march around it. But for the speaker program and the music program, we will likely have a live stream for that. Yes.
Okay. I mean these technical issues are difficult to solve, but I hope this works out. Can we talk maybe a little bit about um, the general mood in the Netherlands? And it was the previous NATO General Secretary, what was his name?
Jens Stoltenberg.
Jens Stoltenberg, thank you, who so famously said, weapons are the way to peace. And in a very sad sense, he captured something that was in 2022 and 23. Like I think he said that in January 23. He captured something about the moment that in Europe, a lot of some peace movements, some peace institutes, and so on, got so captured by the narrative of the war machine when it comes to the Russo-Ukrainian war that they stopped advertising for peace, or like subscribed to that, saying like, yeah, this time we need weapons in order to get to peace. How big was the collapse, let's say, of the traditional peace movement in the Netherlands, and where do you stand today?
Um, well, maybe people are aware of it, but in, I believe, 1983, there was an enormous peace demonstration in the Netherlands. I believe 500,000 people turned out, which is the biggest protest in our history. Um, and well, at most, right now with our monthly protest, we turn out about 1,000 people, so that's quite a drop off. Um,
But
and
monthly, I mean, that's monthly people who come out. Yeah.
yeah, well, usually it's a bit less, but that was our peak, I think, or a few thousand people, but that's neither here nor there. Um, there are, of course, also from that era, a number of traditional peace groups, peace NGOs, um, and yes, they basically support either hard or soft support the government line on the Ukraine war. Um, and one of the most prominent ones, it's called PAX, which is a Christian peace group. They are. It's not surprising that they basically toe the government line, because if you go to their website and you go to the page partners, it says they're the first on the list is the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The second on the list is the US State Department, and you go down the list and you see all the NATO ministries of foreign affairs. So it's a peace movement, which is basically an arm of NATO foreign policy. So there's no surprise that they use this narrative of peace to promote Western geopolitical goals. That's actually not at all new. We can see right now in general that liberalism is used in many ways to legitimize empire. When it comes to civil rights in other countries, it's used as a an argument to open the assault on countries. For example, Russia. So, oh, there's less freedoms when it comes to NGOs and journalists and stuff. So we're legitimized in viewing them as an enemy, even though everyone knows that in times of war, civil liberties decrease even more. So it's quite the opposite. It has the opposite effect. But in this sense, liberalism is used as an argument to legitimize empire, and that actually goes back way back to the 19th century and the British Empire. Um, but that's, I guess, a more academic discussion. But yeah, these peace groups, they do turn out some people, and it's interesting to see that there's a lot more room for dissent when it comes to Palestine than when it comes to Ukraine. So this last month, there was a large protest against the Dutch government policy supporting Israel. About 100,000 people turned out, and there's been a rhetorical shift in government policy now, um, not substantive, uh, but you can see that, well, in this area, they do actually fall on, I guess, the right side of the issue. Um, I guess there's various reasons. The Israeli genocide destroys the West's credibility as an actor for humanitarian intervention and stuff. So I think this is the main reason why such groups go along with the pro-Palestine narrative. Um, but yeah, what I referred to earlier, so the other peace group which which did get positive press coverage, they also organize a protest around the NATO summit, but they do it on the weekend before the NATO summit. Of course, there's good reason to do that, mostly because people don't need to take a day off to attend. Um, and by the way, if anyone has a chance to attend, please do attend both protests. I'm not here to put down the other peace movement. The last thing we need is warfare within the peace movement. Um, but we approached them to work together as well, and they turned us down explicitly, like you just referred to, because of guilt by association. So they view us as working together with problematic people because we say, okay, whoever um, agrees with our demands is welcome to join, which means that we also don't exclude the right-wing populist parties who oppose NATO. Of course, they're not too enthusiastic on coming through, so it's a bit of a moot discussion anyway. But um, they are. We said to them that we don't exclude anyone on principle, and there's a few people within this coalition which are very opposed to us for some, well, not entirely clear reason, and they view us as problematic. So this issue is dividing the peace movement, and it's doing damage as well. So I'm not entirely sure if this is just a matter of them being unstrategic, or if there is a few people within this group who are basically infiltrators who are working to undermine the peace movement. Because there's a few prominent public intellectuals in the Netherlands who have said, okay, I want to support this anti-NATO movement, but if if there is disagreement between the two groups, then I don't want to have anything to do with it at all. So there are already, there's literally a few people, I could name names, I'm not going to, but there are people who have declared that they will distance themselves from this entire protest against this historic NATO summit, specifically because some people refuse to try to unite the anti-war movement.
This is very sad, especially if it's like intellectuals and public intellectuals who don't see that this kind of divide and conquer strategy is, of course, being levied against the peace movement, against a proper peace movement. And I just must say, time and again, I'm also on the left side. I'm a paying member of the Swiss Social Democrats. But if there's somebody on the right side of the spectrum who doesn't want Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and so on being bombed to ashes because they don't want migrants, then I must say, like, okay, fine, I don't share your motivation, but the end goal is
Mhm.
good, and we can rally around the end goal, and we should rally around the end goal. But of course, this is being used at the moment in order to trash talk peace movements, apart from the whole smears about being Russian propagandists and paid by the Kremlin and so on. And this is so cheap. It is so cheap. But unfortunately, it does work to a certain extent. So the your approach of trying to create bridges is a good one. I do hope that they will stand. And one more thing is, of course, that each group can push on their side of the spectrum, which then together also creates important movement. What is your what's your recommendation for people who would like to join or to help? You know, people who don't have a lot of time at their hand, but 1 or 2 hours a week, they would like to support. How can your and in general, the peace movement in the Netherlands and Europe be best supported?
Right. So, at first, if you have the opportunity to come to The Hague on June 24th, 25th, the best thing you can do is be there and be at the protest. And if you come from a different country, do bring a flag of your country so we can visually show how diverse and how universal the opposition against the NATO war machine actually is. So that's the first thing. Of course, I understand that for many people who are not near or in the Netherlands, this is, well, not something that's easily done. So additionally, and this is very important, we are also bringing a petition to the NATO leadership, calling on them to end the drive towards war. And on the day of the NATO summit, so on the 25th, we want to offer this petition to the NATO leadership. So what you can do is you can sign the petition and share the petition. Once again, especially if you're not in the Netherlands, make sure that within the network of peace activists within your country, you share this petition as much as possible so we can so even if you're not able to physically attend, you are there in spirit by having your name under the petition and thereby making sure that the list of names under this petition represents as many countries as possible. So you have the link. If you can post it under this video, then people can find the petition and well, basically share it far and wide.
We will do that. And is there any resource that you recommend to other, like especially the European audience? You know, what's the best place to go in order to get informed about the actual peace movement and the activities, like the International Peace Bureau, or what's kind of the place where you would say, like, everybody go and look there, what's happening, and get informed?
Well, there's not really, I think, a sort of central European or worldwide um, sort of umbrella organ for the peace movement right now, at least not ones which are free from the tainted legacy of the um, New Left Cold War peace movement, which has tied itself to liberalism and in many ways has lent itself to legitimizing war, such as the arming of Ukraine. There's also many political parties which came out of this tradition um, have well basically made a 180-degree turn and like the Green Party in Germany is a good example, but in the Netherlands as well, which was founded on the principle of pacifism and non-aggression and non-cooperation with any kind of war. They are now arguing for building weapons factories within our country. So yeah, it's a bit of a non-answer because at least as far as I'm aware, there's not really a good sort of transnational peace organ. Well, maybe we're in the process of forming it, but we're definitely not there yet. Because as far as I'm aware, every single group which is in this field in some way or another um, is still very much tied to a specific and usually left or left liberal corner of the ideological spectrum.
Right, right. Okay, that's also something I wanted to know because I am also in under the impression that, the peace movement we used to have in the 70s and 80s, that general movement has been co-opted to a good part, unfortunately. And the new movements, the new groups that are coming together are still working individually on their own. But I'm glad that they're coming together, and I'm glad that things are being organized. So I'm very grateful to you and everybody who's working on this. Is there anything toward the end of this interview that you would like to still get out and have people know?
Uh, well, if you have some money to spare, of course, all of us do this on our free time, but things cost money. So we have a donations page on our website as well. So once again, peoplesforpeace.com. Um, and yeah, sign the petition, be there. If you have any money to spare, donate. That's the important thing right now. And so after the NATO summit, right now we're completely focused on what we're going to do protesting the NATO summit. But after the NATO summit, we are not going to disband as an organization, but we will have to see how we are going to reorient and go into the future. So we were created for the purpose of protesting the NATO summit, but we'll see what happens next. So to stay up to date on what's happening there, you can also sign up for our newsletter, and then we will after the NATO summit let you know how we are going to continue organizing for peace.
And you will also read updates about this here and on my Substack. So, Sjoerd de Groot. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.